I've always been a man with a plan. If something bothers me, I don't just sit around whining about it. I make a plan, and I take action. It's how I've lived my life, and it's how I've gotten to where I am today. When I married Kayla 5 years ago, she knew I was decisive, methodical. But knowing something in theory and witnessing it in action are two very different things. Kayla works as a marketing agent for a local business, and I'm the chief engineer at an automobile factory. We both have demanding jobs, but I've always believed that life should run as smoothly as a well-oiled machine. When things don't, well, I fix them. In the early years of our marriage, Kayla got to see this side of me up close. It started small. "Gerald, why do we always have to eat at the same restaurant?" she asked one evening, her fork idly pushing her salad around the plate. "We never try anything new." I had anticipated this complaint. "Because this place is efficient. They get our order right, they serve fast, and we don't have to waste time deciding." She sighed. "Yeah, but variety is nice. Maybe next time we could." "We won't have this issue anymore," I interrupted. The next day, I compiled a list of restaurants that met my standards: high-quality food, excellent service, minimal wait times. I tested them over the next 2 weeks and narrowed the list down to 3. When Kayla brought up the subject again, I presented her with the list. "There," I said. "Pick one of these." She blinked. "You made a list?" "I made a solution." She laughed, shaking her head, but I saw something else in her eyes: curiosity, maybe even a little apprehension. Then came the bigger things. Some problems, though, require a little push. There was this dog, an Alaskan Malamute from the house next door. Big, shaggy, and full of energy. That wouldn't have been a problem if he had stayed in his yard. But every single morning, without fail, he strutted onto my driveway and took a massive dump right outside my garage. The first time, I brushed it off. Dogs were dogs. The second time, I walked over to his owner, some scrawny, absent-minded guy with a coffee cup permanently glued to his hand. I explained the situation. He just laughed. "He's just a puppy," he said, waving me off. "Still trying to train him, you know?" I took that excuse. Once. The third time, I knocked on his door. He opened it, looking annoyed. "Hey, man," he said, rubbing his eyes like I had woken him up from a nap. "What's up?" "You know what's up," I said, keeping my voice level. "Your dog. My driveway." "Ah, come on," he chuckled. "He's just a baby." I stared at him. "Then control him." He shrugged. "I'm trying, man. Just give it some time." I gave him time. Exactly 48 hours. Then, the next morning, I stood by the window, watching as that overgrown mutt squatted down, completely unbothered by the world, right outside my garage. Kayla walked in behind me, holding her coffee. I didn't take my eyes off the dog. "You know," I said, my voice casual, "when owners can't control their dogs, the dogs disappear." Kayla stiffened. "Gerald." I turned to look at her, smiling. "Relax," I said. "I'm not going to kill him." Her eyes narrowed. "Then what are you going to do?" "Nothing." I took a sip of my coffee. "I'm just going to sit back, relax, and let the problem solve itself." The next evening, the dog was gone. At first, the owner thought he had just wandered off. But as the days passed and no one saw him again, posters went up, social media posts, neighbors whispering, but the dog was never found. Kayla never asked me about it. She didn't need to. Then there was the idiot boyfriend of our other neighbor. This guy had a habit of pulling up right outside my house, blasting his god-awful metal music at full volume. I work hard. I come home tired, and the last thing I want is my windows rattling from his terrible taste in music. The first time, I let it slide. The second time, I walked out, knocked on his window, and told him to keep it down. The third time, I made it very clear. "If you don't turn that garbage off, you're going to have problems." He smirked. "What, old man? You going to call the cops?" I smiled. "No, I don't call the cops." He laughed and revved his engine. "Guess you'll just have to deal with it, then." I didn't deal with it. The next time he parked there, I sat on the couch with Kayla, listening to the bass shake the walls. I leaned back, stretched, and said, "You know, sometimes loud music causes the nuts and joints of a car to break from vibration." Kayla didn't say anything. She just watched me. 2 days later, he was in the hospital. The cause? His engine had ripped right out of the chassis while he was driving. Lost control. Spun out. Hit a tree. He's in the hospital for a few weeks. Kayla knew me well. She knew that when I found a problem, I found a solution. That's just how I operated. But she also had a belief, one she clung to, whether out of hope or naivety, that I could only solve a problem if I knew it existed in the first place. That if something remained hidden from me, I wouldn't act because I wouldn't have a reason to. And for a long time, she was right. For years, I had no reason to suspect anything in our marriage was off. Everything was steady, routine, predictable in the way a good life should be. Until one day, I started noticing the shift. It was subtle at first. A few minor changes that didn't seem like much on their own, but, when added together, formed something I couldn't ignore. Kayla had always been affectionate, but suddenly, she became more. Every evening when I came home from work, she was waiting, freshly showered, wrapped in a towel, or already in something sheer and inviting. The moment I stepped through the door, she pounced, pulling me in, kissing me, dragging me straight to the bedroom. It wasn't a complaint. Not at first. What hot-blooded man wouldn't want to come home after a long day to a wife who smelled like vanilla and honey, her skin warm from the shower, her body eager and willing before I even had a chance to take my shoes off? I enjoyed it. But then, the question settled in the back of my mind, a whisper that refused to be ignored. How dirty was she getting that she needed to take a shower every single day before I got home? Some problems announce themselves with loud crashes, big, messy explosions that you can't ignore. Others, they slip in quietly, like a whisper in the dark, waiting for you to notice. This one came with a bug. A tiny, insignificant little thing, small enough to ignore, until it turned my stomach into a war zone. The kind of problem that makes a man abandon his pride, cut his workday short, and drive home before he risks turning himself into a joke in front of his colleagues. I pulled into my driveway, relieved to be home, but then something caught my eye. A bicycle. It wasn't a flashy car, the kind you see in those cliché stories where the husband comes home early and finds a sports car parked outside. No Mustang. No sleek, expensive vehicle that screamed, "I don't belong to a married man." Just a bicycle. And somehow, that made it worse. I didn't rush in. No, I was methodical. Slow. Deliberate. I already knew. I could feel it in my bones, in the way my stomach twisted, not from the bug, but from something far deeper. I stepped inside, listening. At first, nothing. Just the distant hum of the refrigerator, the soft creak of the house settling. And then, I heard it. A sound that didn't belong. Soft moans, rising and falling, carrying through the air like a sick melody. I closed my eyes for a moment, took a deep breath, and moved forward. I walked through the hallway, past the pictures of our wedding, past the little details of the life we built together. Every step felt heavier than the last. The bedroom door was ajar. I could see them before they saw me. Kayla and a man, some wiry, flexible thing of a man, bent and twisted in a way that made no immediate sense. It took me a full 10 seconds to comprehend what I was looking at, how he was positioned, what exactly he was doing. Boy, that was some weird Kama Sutra shit. And when I did, I didn't speak. I didn't rage. I just turned around and walked out of the house. I walked away from the house, but the fire inside me didn't settle. I was enraged. That much was clear. Any man in my position would be. But I was also confused. Not the kind of confusion that comes from shock. No, I understood what I saw. My wife, naked, tangled up in another man, moaning like I wasn't supposed to be home. That part was painfully, disgustingly clear. No, the confusion came from the sheer mechanics of it. I'd seen sex videos. I tried different positions. But what I walked in on, that was some next-level, physics-defying nonsense. It was like watching Cirque du Soleil, but naked and disgusting. My mind kept trying to recreate the angles, the balance, the movements. How the hell were they even doing that? But then, I shook it off. Screw the logistics. Screw the imagination. I didn't need to waste time figuring out how my wife was getting drilled. I needed a plan. And my plans always worked. Step 1, identify the man. I needed to know who he was. A man like that. Lean, flexible, moving like a damn snake. He wasn't some random guy from a bar. He had training. So, I started digging. I didn't have to look far. Kayla, in her infinite stupidity, had left clues all over the place. A few casual questions to the neighbors, a quick check on local businesses, and there he was. Wayne, yoga instructor. Apparently, the yoga instructor. The guy had a reputation among the local women. Charming, friendly, always ready to help his students with one-on-one sessions. I even found his Instagram. Pictures of him posing shirtless, stretching, surrounded by women in leggings who looked far too impressed with his downward dog. Step 2, surveillance. Before I acted, I needed to watch. This wasn't just about catching Kayla in the act again. No, I already had what I needed on that front. This was about Wayne. I needed to know his schedule, his habits, his weaknesses. I started tracking him, watching where he taught, which cafes he liked, who he talked to. And what I found was interesting. Wayne wasn't just sleeping with my wife. Wayne was sleeping with many wives. As for Kayla, I had her phone bugged with a small app, and now every message will come to me and will be stored in a cloud. Step 3, check the legal options. This was key. I wasn't some idiot who would throw fists and land myself in jail. No, I needed to be smart. I needed to know what I could legally do to make sure this bastard suffered in the worst ways possible. Adultery laws? Weak. Divorce laws? Useful, but not enough. But then I remembered something else. There was another yoga instructor years ago, one who had run out of the country after too many complaints piled up against him. Because, see, men like Wayne, they don't just stop at one or two affairs. They get comfortable. They start pushing boundaries. And unfortunately for Wayne, he will not be that lucky. For the next 3 weeks, I became a ghost in my own marriage. I came home, ate dinner, played the role of a clueless husband while Kayla smiled, kissed me, and pretended everything was normal. It wasn't. I knew exactly why she showered every day before I got home. I knew exactly why she was so eager to jump on me the moment I walked through the door. It wasn't desire. It was guilt management. But guilt wasn't enough to stop her. And that's why I needed more than just my own anger. I needed proof. I got everything. Every text. Every call. Every damn whisper between them. I had a keylogger on her phone. I had voice recordings from her late-night calls. I had video. Kayla wasn't cheating for love. She wasn't planning to leave me. For her, it was fun. A game. And Wayne thought he was some kind of sex god. I listened to their messages, their filthy jokes, their casual betrayals. I listened as Wayne bragged about how flexible she was, how tight she was, how she fought it at first, but now came to him willingly. And Kayla? She laughed. She flirted. But then came the part that truly set me off. One night, Wayne tried to push it further. Wayne, you ever think about saying my name when you're with him? Just to see if he notices? Kayla, don't be stupid, Wayne. Wayne, come on, it'd be fun. But he wouldn't even get mad. I bet he'd just keep going, like an idiot. Kayla, stop. I mean it. Wayne, relax, I'm kidding. She didn't laugh. She changed the subject. That was when I knew. She may be cheating, but she still feared me. She knew what I was capable of. She knew that some men get mad. Some men cry. But I wasn't some men. And that's why Wayne was about to learn a very, very important lesson. He picked the wrong man's wife. 3 days later, I had my bedroom bugged with a camera. Soon, I had them, Kayla and Wayne, performing for the lens, oblivious to the fact that their little escapades were now part of my growing evidence. By now, my revenge plan was fully formed. I watched the tape 5 times. 5 times I forced myself to sit through it. Not out of some twisted sense of enjoyment, but to understand, to analyze every frame, every moan, every movement. And every single time, I came out just as confused. The mechanics of their sex rituals defied logic. It was like watching some ungodly fusion of yoga and gymnastics, an act that seemed to stretch the limits of human anatomy. It made me sick. It made me furious. And most of all, it made me ready. The morning of my first move, I sat at the dining table with Kayla, sipping coffee as if nothing had changed. She was reading something on her phone, legs crossed, completely unaware that her entire world was about to be turned upside down. I let the silence linger, let her take a few more sips before I carefully set my cup down and spoke. I heard a rumor today. Kayla glanced up, uninterested. There's a yoga teacher in the neighborhood giving some pretty, deranged sex lessons to wives. The reaction was immediate. She choked on her coffee, coughing violently as she grabbed a napkin. I slid the tissue box toward her without saying a word. I watched her. Not just her face, but her hands. The way her fingers trembled slightly. The way her throat moved when she swallowed. The way her breathing changed. She was scared. Good. She dabbed her lips, trying to play it off. What? I leaned back in my chair, staring at her. Unblinking. You know what happens to bastards like that? She forced a laugh. What are you talking about? I tilted my head, my expression blank. They get beat up. Badly. The color in her face drained. Sometimes, they lose their balls. She set her cup down carefully, as if sudden movement would provoke me. I heard about a husband once. He found out his wife was screwing some punk behind his back. You know what he did? Kayla shook her head slowly, eyes locked onto me like a deer staring down a rifle barrel. I smiled. He called a cartel guy. They grabbed the lover, turned him into soup, and then fed it to the wife. Silence. Kayla's lips parted slightly, her breath coming in shallow gasps. She tried to mask it, to act calm, but her fingers curled tight around the napkin in her lap. She knew. She knew that I knew. Now she was afraid. The next night, I tracked Wayne to a bar. He was easy to follow. His routine was predictable. A few drinks, some casual flirting, then a slow, staggering walk to his car. He lived about 10 miles out of town, in a small, isolated ranch. No neighbors close enough to hear screams. Perfect. I waited. Let him drive home. Let him stumble inside, thinking his night was just another forgettable one. But for Wayne, this was the night he'd never forget. As he fumbled with his keys, I moved in silently, my gloved fingers tightening around the hammer in my hand. One swift, calculated swing to the back of his head, and he dropped like a sack of bricks, groaning but not unconscious. I had to be quick. He hadn't seen me. I made sure of that. The black ski mask covered my face, and the dark clothing blended me into the night. Wayne let out a muffled, pain-choked sound as I dragged him inside. His body was heavy, but adrenaline made me stronger. I kicked the door shut behind me, the soft click sealing us in. He tried to push himself up, but I stomped on his hand. Hard. Bones cracked. He screamed. Hurts, doesn't it? I said, my voice calm, almost clinical. That's just the beginning. I knelt beside him and let him see the hammer up close, let the terror settle into his eyes before I brought it down onto his elbow. A sickening crunch, another scream. One by one, I went to work, systematic, deliberate. Knees, shoulders, wrists. The hammer found them all. The human body is a delicate thing when you know where to hit. And Wayne was screaming between gasps, begging for mercy. Please, man, whatever you think I did. I silenced him with another hit, this time to his ankle. He howled. No begging, Wayne. You should have saved that for God. He passed out after the 8th or 9th blow. Pain does that. But I wasn't done. I stood up, pulled the small canister of lighter fluid from my pocket, and uncapped it. The scent filled the room as I doused his groin, the liquid soaking into his jeans, into his flesh. Then, with a flick of my lighter, whoosh, fire ignited in a flash, spreading like divine judgment. First his, Sodom and Gomorrah popped due to heat and turned into popcorn. Then the Tower of Siloam fell. Hell had finally come for Wayne. I stood there for a moment, watching him writhe even in unconsciousness, his body reacting to the pain before his mind could. Then, I took his phone from the counter and dialed 911. There's a man burning alive out here, I said, disguising my voice with a low, panicked rasp. Please, send help. Hurry. I dropped the phone next to him and slipped out into the night. But of course, I was never there. Not according to the cameras. Because at that exact moment, the footage would show me at home, sitting in my living room, relaxed, laughing, enjoying a night with Susie and her 4 sisters. The next evening, Kayla and I were sitting at the kitchen table, sipping coffee. It was one of those rare, quiet moments. She sat across from me, scrolling through her phone absent-mindedly while I leaned back in my chair, enjoying the aroma of the freshly brewed coffee. Then, her phone rang. She picked it up, bringing it to her ear. Hello? She answered, her tone casual at first. Then, everything changed. What? He's what? His balls, oh my God. Her fingers trembled around the phone, her eyes wide with shock. She sat down, dazed, like someone had just pulled the ground out from under her. I watched her closely, hiding the amusement curling at the edges of my lips. Something wrong, honey? I asked, keeping my voice light, concerned. She turned to me, her face pale. Just as you predicted, a yoga teacher was attacked last night. He's in the hospital. Her voice wavered. They said his injuries are exactly what you described. His joints are shattered. She swallowed hard, looking nauseous, his groin, it's been burned. They don't know if he'll ever. Oh my God. I leaned back in my chair, stretching lazily, pretending to absorb the news. Then I exhaled dramatically. He's not soup yet, huh? I mused, taking another sip of coffee. I mean, he's still alive. Kayla's gaze snapped to me, eyes filled with something that teetered between fear and realization. I set my cup down, fixing her with a slow, deliberate look. Well, I continued, my voice casual but deliberate. If I had done it, he'd be soup. And I'd be feeding you that soup. Her breath hitched. She flinched as if an invisible hand had just struck her. The silence between us stretched, thick and suffocating. Then I stood, pushing my chair back with an unhurried motion. I'm going to get some beer, I announced, grabbing my keys from the counter. Then, as if an afterthought, I glanced back at her. Oh, I made some chicken soup for you. It's in the fridge. Heat it up if you want some. That did it. Her lips parted slightly, but no words came out. Her hands, still curled around her coffee mug. She was too stunned to even react, her mind racing through the implications of what I'd just said. I watched her for a beat longer, enjoying the way the color drained from her face. Then, without another word, I turned and walked out the door. When I came back, Kayla was still in the kitchen, sitting exactly where I had left her. She hadn't touched her coffee. The mug sat cold on the table, untouched, just like the bowl of soup in front of her. Her hands were clasped together, her fingers laced so tightly they had gone pale. She was staring blankly at the table, lost in thought. I walked up to her, making sure my footsteps were slow, deliberate. Then I pulled out a chair and sat beside her. What happened, honey? I asked, my voice smooth, almost amused. You seem a bit upset. She blinked and turned to me, her face still drained of color. I could see the thoughts racing through her mind, the pieces trying to fit together in a way that made sense. Then, softly, hesitantly, she asked, Who do you think might have done it? Her voice was barely above a whisper. And what might he do next? I leaned back, rubbing my chin as if deep in thought. Then, after a long pause, I let out a low chuckle. Well, I said, turning my gaze to her. If I were the guy who beat up that yoga teacher. I let the sentence hang in the air for a moment, watching her reaction. I would then move my attention to my bitch of a wife. Kayla flinched, her breath caught in her throat. I smiled. But, I continued, tilting my head as if considering my words carefully. Divorcing her would mean I'd have to pay her 50% of everything I own. I let out a mock sigh, shaking my head. And that would be rewarding her with a lifestyle she doesn't deserve. She swallowed hard, her fingers tightening around each other. I leaned in closer, lowering my voice. I'd have to pay her alimony, too. And who knows? She might just find another yoga teacher to screw and pay him with my money. Kayla's breathing was shallow now. She looked like a deer caught in headlights, completely frozen. I let a slow smirk spread across my face before delivering the final blow. I would never let that happen, I murmured, my voice calm, measured. Instead, I would do what I did to that yoga teacher. I paused, watching the sheer terror bloom in her eyes. Maybe worse. I sat there for a moment. Kayla's breathing was shallow, her fingers trembling. The fear in her eyes was delicious. I let out a slow exhale, then leaned back in my chair, stretching my arms lazily. Maybe, I mused, tapping my fingers on the wooden surface. I call that Mexican cartel guy. You know, the one who makes problems disappear. Kayla stiffened. Or maybe, I continued, my voice smooth and deliberate, the Scarlet Judge. I turned to her, watching the confusion flicker across her face. You don't know him, do you? He's got a way of making people regret their sins. She swallowed hard, her lips parting as if to say something, but nothing came out. I leaned in just slightly, lowering my voice. Or maybe I do it myself. I shrugged, like it was the simplest thought in the world. Bury the cheating wife in the backyard, plant a bush of roses over her. Kayla gasped, her hands clapping over her mouth. Who knows? I said, standing up and stretching, as if I was just having a casual conversation about the weather. But all I do know is this. I turned to her, my eyes locking onto hers, my voice cold and unshakable. I would be ruthless. She was shaking now, her eyes darting around the room as if searching for an escape. Then, after a long, heavy silence, she whispered, What if she loves you? That made me laugh. A deep, throaty chuckle, the kind that carried no warmth. I shook my head, letting the amusement dance in my eyes as I turned back to her. If she loved me, I said, my voice dripping with mockery, she wouldn't have done it. I took a step closer, watching her shrink back instinctively. A faithful wife doesn't spread her legs for another man. She dropped her gaze, her fingers twisting together in her lap. She had no defense, no argument. I let the silence stretch just a little longer before I delivered the final blow. If she ever thinks about escaping my wrath, I said casually, like I was giving legal advice, she won't ask for anything in the divorce. I took a step back, watching her reaction. She'll just walk away. Kayla's lips parted, but no words came. Her eyes glistened, fear and realization settling into her bones. I smiled, turned my back on her, and popped open my beer. The satisfying hiss of carbonation filled the tense air. Now, I said over my shoulder, already walking away, if you'll excuse me. I have a football game to watch. I took a long, slow sip as I dropped onto the couch, the leather cool against my skin. The game flickered to life on the screen, the sound of the roaring crowd filling the room. A perfect play unfolded before me, and I smirked, taking another sip. I think I just made a touchdown. 3 days later, I came home to silence. The kind that stretched through the walls, seeped into the furniture, and made itself comfortable in the empty spaces where laughter used to be. The air smelled different too, less like her perfume, more like dust and endings. Then I saw it. A manila envelope sat on the kitchen table, neat and unassuming, yet heavier than anything I had ever lifted. I picked it up, peeled it open with steady hands, too steady, and pulled out the stack of papers. My eyes scanned the top, dissolution of marriage. She had signed it. No demands. No fight. No alimony. No property disputes. No parting words scribbled in the margins. Just her signature, curling like a quiet farewell. I let out a slow breath. It should have felt like victory. Instead, it felt like a weight pressing down on my chest, like standing in the aftermath of a storm, not sure if I had survived it or just been left behind. I walked to the living room, poured myself a glass of Jack Daniels, and sank into my recliner. The ice clinked as I swirled the drink, watching the amber liquid catch the dim light. Guess that's it, I muttered, though there was no one to hear me. I took a slow sip, letting the burn settle in my throat, hoping it would drown out the strange mix of emotions clawing at my insides. I was free, but freedom had a taste, bitter, like whiskey without a chaser. A week later, I heard the news. Kayla had left town. Wayne had plans to leave town, pack up whatever scraps of dignity he had left, and slither away like the rat he was. But karma, if you believe in that sort of thing, had other plans. The news broke a week after Kayla disappeared. Turns out, he had a habit of mentoring more than just yoga students. A few housewives came forward, their voices shaky but firm, telling stories of manipulation, pressure, and spiritual awakenings that crossed a line. One accusation turned into 2, then 3. By the time the cops showed up at his door, he wasn't some misunderstood free spirit. He was just another predator who finally ran out of luck. Last I heard, he was sitting in a jail cell, awaiting trial. And me? I was free. There were moments, quiet ones, late at night, when I caught myself thinking about Kayla, wondering if she missed me, if she regretted it, if she ever felt the weight of what she had done. But then I'd remind myself, she made her choices. And so did I. And I walked away without a scratch. The cops came around once, just doing their job, asking questions about Wayne's attacker. I played it cool, kept my answers short. Then I pulled out my ace, security footage. I set my phone on the table, hit play, and leaned back as the officers watched. There I was, in my bedroom, alone, enjoying a long night with Susie and her 4 sisters. The older cop cleared his throat. His partner shifted uncomfortably. Well, the first one said, rubbing his jaw, that's, pretty conclusive. I smirked. Yeah, I don't get out much. They closed their notebook, nodded, and left without another word. And just like that, I was in the clear. I still have the video of Kayla and Wayne. It sits on a flash drive in my drawer, untouched but never erased. Some nights, I pour myself a drink and, against my better judgment, watch it again. Not out of nostalgia, not out of pain, just curiosity. Because to this day, I still scratch my head around the mechanics of their sex. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.